Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and I want to continue exploring Vecna, Eve of Ruin. Let's continue exploring Vecna, Eve of Ruin, Chapter 3. So the player characters are on the wrecked Space Galleon Lambent Zenith, which is in the astral plane, which is in the astral sea, right? They're specifically in the Stern Castle section, and they are moving forward, and they come across Kycera, okay? Now, Kycera, fascinating. So Kycera is a member of the Lambent Zenith crew, and they're all stranded here. They're stranded in the middle of the astral sea. Now, Kycera is in the galley, and she is making food, right? And you're like, well, wait a second. Why does she... And I love this aspect of Vecna, Eve of Ruin. So Spelljammer, fifth era Spelljammer, right? New Spelljammer is getting baked into Dungeons & Dragons. And this is one of the reasons why I think Spelljammer is succeeding, whereas previously Spelljammer failed. And the reason why was basically in the 90s, Spelljammer was a setting, but it did not really connect to everything else, right? And it's hard to make this connect, right? Because you're like, well, wait a second. How do you get around all these realms in Dungeons & Dragons? And now the answer is Planescape, and the answer is Spelljammer, right? And they each have their own distinct sections, right? Like they have their own distinct purposes, right? But we're really starting to get Spelljammer really defined, and the reason why is Amanda Heyman is working on it. So Amanda Heyman is coming in and really kind of locking into place Spelljammer. So Spelljammer, the astral sea is this timeless void, a timeless void. Okay, you're not going to starve to death there. So Kycera is a member of the crew, and she likes to cook, right? Now, why does she do that, right? Well, because they don't need food here. You're not going to die from starvation here. And the reason, and so essentially her opinion is that this is a ritual that helps the crew to keep up morale. Now, who is Kycera, and why does she want morale high? Well, she is an orc assassin. What? Like, so why is she an orc assassin on this Spelljammer ship? Well, first of all, the reason why is this is a 10th level adventure, right? And so everybody they come across, man, they want these people to be able to throw down, right? And assassins can throw down. They can murder people. That's what they're built to do, right? And so Kycera is not going to start a fight, right? She has a different role now, right? But she is she's presented, in the adventure, and she is an orc assassin. So I want to look at both of those words, assassin, so that if any of the characters gets uppity, or if there is a breakdown of if not everyone is under their manners, as we like to say, right? She can throw down and put a knife in somebody's eye. That's what she's there for, right? And but she's also there in a perspective to be able to like really just to interact with the characters. They don't need to be a ruckus, right? That's important. Now, let's talk about orc. Why is she an orc? Well, this is important. Like, in 2014, we got our book, and they're like, hey, here's the species. Half orc. Half orc. That's gone. You are never going to see a half orc in Dungeons & Dragons again, ever. It's really kind of a important distinction. Like, you are never going to see a half orc in it's just not going to happen, which I thought that's pretty fascinating to me, that is that is the way it is. So she's an orc, right, which fixes something, and this is why we're moving toward this multiverse, the Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, right? It fixes 35 different species in Dungeons & Dragons. Also, just real quick, over on D&D Beyond, all of the species, they're still under the tag race, and all of the classes are now on cards. This is pretty cool. Like they're really Like they're on these visual distinct cards. It's pretty powerful. So Kycera is this orc assassin, and she is going to feed the crew. And also, it was really interesting. In the book, it says, hey, here's this, there's 2 bottles of wine in the galley that are worth 500 gold. I love that they're saying, hey, we're not going to assume that the player characters are not going to steal. We're going to tell you the treasure that's there, right? And this, is really helpful to the dungeon master, because the dungeon master might take Kycera out to move the plot faster, and they could just say, hey, you find two bottles of wine that are worth 500 gold, right? And what's really fascinating is also there's a lot of treasure in this wrecked space galleon, the Lambent Zenith, that is not just pure gold coins, that is not magical weapons, and I really think Amanda Hayman's doing a great job of just kind of spreading out what treasure is in Dungeons & Dragons, right? It's very cool. I really enjoyed that. So the characters go to Kycera, and she doesn't really have, she does have a secret. Everybody's got a secret, right? Because this is a currency that Vecna is trying to get. Also, I think Dungeons & Dragons is figuring out that, like, secrets are really a big, huge... A secret is a treasure that every dungeon master character has. A secret is a treasure that every dungeon master character has. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. I love that, right? And I think it's a new way to understand treasure. It's a new way to understand dungeon master characters, DMCs, and it's important. Yeah. So, oh my gosh. Yeah, that's better language. By the way, are you guys aware we need to get rid of the term non-player character? It's literally no longer even allowed on some social media, and like the Muggle world came in and kind of took it from us. So I think we might want to start using DMC instead of NPC. So I'm saying Dungeon Master Character, DMC, right? Okay. So, and you're like, well, why rename stuff? Controlling language is extremely important in our world. It is done by the intellectual elite who understand that every battle we're fighting today is fought over language, right? And actually, the real battles, the battles that matter in this world, are intellectual battles. Vladimir Putin, good point, great. You know, he's a murderer, murders people every single day right now, right? He's just a rank, like, ridiculous thug, right? Like, he's like, physical violence at this point is tired, right? Vladimir's tired. It's just, you know, it's not, yeah. It's important you control language. If you don't like a word, remap it, right? Reforge it, redirect it, reinitialize it, right? DMC, Dungeon Master Character, rather than NPC. I think it's just a better way to go. All right, Kycera, right? She is, she's there, and she can tell the player characters where the ward runes are, okay? Ward runes, why, okay, why do the characters need to worry about ward runes? Well, the ward runes are powering the wards that are protecting, excuse me, that are protecting the second piece of the rod, the second piece of the rod of 7 pieces, right? So they need to take down the wards, and then they need to take the piece, right? And so Kycera knows where the ward runes are located on the ship, all right? That's important, because the player characters can find where the rod of 7 pieces is and still not be able to take it, right? That's important to understand. So Kycera's there, she's doing her thing, and like, it can go down like this, right? She can assassinate one of the Dragon Master characters, the player characters, or she can literally feed them, right? It can go either way, which I think is really cool. So they meet Kycera in the galley. They're starting to meet the crew of the Lambent Zenith, these people who are stranded here. And it's excellent. It's an excellent story that Amanda Hayman is really crafting together here, right? Next, the characters go on from her, and they meet Deveris. Deveris is someone who is on a lifeboat. His spelljammer was destroyed do not remember how his Spelljammer was destroyed, but his Spelljammer was destroyed, and so he took a lifeboat from his ship and set out on this lifeboat, right? Well, his lifeboat then just then crashed into Havoc, the dead god husk, and then he found the wrecked space galleon Lambent and Zenith there, okay? Now, Deveris, when he crashed into Havoc's dead god husk, Deveris, who is a druid, human druid, Deveris actually arrived with with two other creatures. One, there's a treant who had grown an awakened tree. There's an awakened tree who had grown into his lifeboat. Now, this is part of Spelljammer lore because there are some ships, I think they're called life ships, that are literally have like a treant as it's grown into the ship, and it's a living ship, right? And so this is the same thing, but on a lifeboat, right? That treant, that awakened tree, I'm pretty sure it's a treant who's an awakened tree, or maybe that's redundant, but it's a treant, and this treant's name is Rosebud. Also, in the lifeboat that has a treant grown into it, there was also a blink dog who was Deveris's blink dog. So Deveris arrives here with his blink dog and with Rosebud, okay? And Deveris is stranded here as well. And so that is Dungeons & Dragons. That is the continuation of my coverage of Dungeons & Dragons, Vecna, Eve of Ruin, Chapter 3. And I wanted to thank you very much for letting me share my opinion on the coolest parts of Vecna, Eve of Ruin, Chapter 3. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion, nothing more or less. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.